I stepped into the bank, adjusting my jacket as the cold air from outside clung to me. The place was quieter than I expected. Just the soft hum of computers, the occasional shuffle of papers, and the murmured conversations of tellers handling transactions. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered slightly, casting a dull glow over the polished tile floors. I'd been here before. Many times, actually. Same security guard at the entrance, same smell of printer ink and cheap coffee lingering in the air. But today, something felt off. Maybe it was just me overthinking, or maybe it was the way the receptionist glanced at me, like she wasn't sure if she recognized me or not. I nodded at the security guy, a tall, built man with a buzz cut. He didn't nod back. That was strange. Usually he gave me a subtle smirk, like he knew some inside joke that I wasn't in on. Today his face was blank, almost tense. Shaking it off, I approached the queue. A few people stood in line, waiting for their turn at the counter. An elderly woman fumbled with her purse, muttering something under her breath. A man in a gray suit tapped his foot impatiently, staring at his phone like he was trying to will time to move faster. I pulled out my wallet, checking to make sure my card was still there. It was. Good. This should be quick. Just a simple withdrawal. In and out. No big deal. That was when I noticed something odd. The teller at the counter, a young woman with auburn hair tied in a tight bun, kept glancing in my direction. Not in the way people usually did. No recognition, no curiosity, just unease. Her fingers fidgeted against the keyboard, eyes darting between me and something behind the desk. I turned slightly, pretending to adjust my sleeve, and caught a glimpse of the manager near the back. He was on the phone. His eyes locked onto mine for a fraction of a second before he turned away, speaking in a hushed voice. Okay, that was weird. I exhaled slowly, trying to shake the creeping tension building in my gut. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe it was just a normal day, and I was making up stories in my head. But then, the security guard moved. Not just a casual shift in stance. No. He took an actual step forward, positioning himself just a little closer to me. His hand hovered near his belt, where I assumed his radio was clipped. That's when I knew. Something was definitely wrong. The line moved forward, but I barely noticed. My mind was busy piecing together the strange energy in the room. The sideways glances, the hushed whispers, the security guard shifting closer. None of it made sense. Was it just paranoia? Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe it was just another slow day at the bank. Still, my instincts told me otherwise. When it was finally my turn, I stepped up to the counter. The young teller, her name tag read Emily, offered me a tight-lipped smile. But her fingers gripped the edge of the desk like she was steadying herself. I placed my card down and slid it toward her. Just a withdrawal, I said, keeping my voice calm. Emily nodded, but her hands hesitated before reaching for the card. She stole a quick glance at the manager again. He wasn't on the phone anymore. Now, he was watching. Not just watching, studying me. The kind of look someone gives when they're trying to put a puzzle together but don't have all the pieces. Emily tapped on her keyboard, eyes darting between the screen and me. I waited. 10 seconds passed, then 20. The usual beeping of the computer sounded different. Longer, like an error message was flashing on her screen. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She blinked rapidly, then nodded too quickly. Yeah, 1 second. She turned to her coworker at the next counter, a guy with short blonde hair and a headset around his neck. They exchanged a glance, one of those unspoken conversations that happened when people knew something you didn't. That's when my stomach sank. The security guard shifted again, positioning himself just a few feet to my right. His hand was no longer near his radio. It was now resting lightly on the holster at his waist. I glanced back at Emily. She was stalling, but why? Is there a problem with my account? I asked, my voice level but firm. She swallowed hard. It's, just taking a second to process. Lieutenant. I knew a stall when I heard one. Something wasn't right, and now I needed to figure out what was happening before things escalated. The manager finally moved. He walked toward us, adjusting the cuffs of his navy blue suit. His smile was polite but hollow. Sir, may I have a word? I looked at Emily, then at the security guard, who was standing fully alert now, his jaw set. About what? I asked. If you could step aside for a moment, the manager said smoothly, gesturing toward a small office at the back. It's just a minor issue. We'll get it sorted out quickly. Yeah, that didn't sound promising. I could feel the eyes of the other customers now, sensing the tension. The man in the gray suit had stopped tapping his foot. The elderly woman had paused her rummaging. Even the staff behind the glass windows were watching now. I exhaled through my nose, feeling my pulse start to pick up. My mind worked fast. If I refused to go with him, that might look even more suspicious. If I went, I was stepping into an unknown situation where I had no control. A slow, deliberate choice. I turned to Emily, my voice even. I just want to withdraw my money, that's all. The manager's smile didn't waver, but I saw the slight shift in his stance. Of course. This will only take a moment. I glanced once more at the security guard. He was watching my hands. All right. So this was happening. The only question now was, why? I didn't like this. Not one bit. But I had no choice. With a slow nod, I stepped back from the counter, feeling the weight of the room shift around me. The security guard didn't move, but his hand tightened slightly on his belt. The manager, still smiling that artificial smile, gestured toward the glass-walled office in the back. I walked ahead, feeling my heartbeat drum against my ribs. The office door closed behind me with a soft click. The air inside was colder than the rest of the bank, the AC humming faintly overhead. A desk sat in the middle, cluttered with paperwork and a desktop computer. The blinds on the windows were half closed, casting striped shadows along the wall. The manager walked past me and took a seat, motioning for me to do the same. I didn't. Would you like some water? He asked, his voice as smooth as ever. I shook my head. I'd like to know what's going on. He let out a small breath, folding his hands on the desk. I understand this might be confusing, but we just need to verify something before processing your request. Verify what? He clicked a few keys on his computer, eyes scanning the screen. Then he looked at me carefully. Sir, do you own any other accounts with us? I frowned. Number just this one. His expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in his eyes, like he was waiting for me to say that. That's interesting, he said, tapping his fingers on the desk. Because according to our system, another account under your name was flagged this morning. I felt my breath slow. Flagged for what? The manager leaned back slightly. Suspicious activity. A chill crawled down my spine. What kind of activity? I asked, keeping my voice steady. He hesitated. Then he swiveled his monitor slightly toward me, and that's when I saw it. A second bank account. My name, my details, but not mine. The screen displayed transactions I didn't recognize. Large amounts being deposited and withdrawn at random intervals from places I had never been. The most recent activity? Just 2 hours ago. I stared at it, my mind racing. That's not mine, I said. I have nothing to do with that. The manager studied me carefully. Then perhaps you can explain how this account was opened using your identification. I clenched my jaw. I can't, because I didn't open it. He exhaled through his nose, rubbing his temple. Look, sir, I'm not accusing you of anything yet, but we need to get to the bottom of this before we can proceed. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process. Someone had stolen my identity. Someone had been moving large sums of money under my name. And now, I was standing in a bank, looking exactly like the kind of guy who would walk in to make a withdrawal right after a fraudulent deposit. I needed to think fast. If my ID was used, then your system should have a record of who opened the account, I said. Maybe a different address, a different phone number, something that proves it wasn't me. The manager considered this. He turned back to his screen, typing something. I watched as his brows pulled together slightly. He seemed surprised by whatever he found. I stepped closer. What is it? His lips pressed into a thin line. The account was opened in person, at a different branch, 2 weeks ago. That didn't make sense. I wasn't even in the city 2 weeks ago. Can you pull up the security footage from that day? I asked. The manager hesitated, then nodded slowly. That might take some time. I exhaled. Time. That was the one thing I didn't have. Because outside this office, the security guard was still watching. The bank staff was still whispering. And I had the sinking feeling that the moment this conversation dragged on too long, they'd assume I was stalling for a completely different reason. And that's when things would get much, much worse. The air in the office felt heavier now. The manager's fingers hovered over the keyboard as if hesitating on his next move. I could see the conflict in his eyes. Was I telling the truth? Or was I just another smooth-talking scammer trying to cover my tracks? I needed to take control of the situation. Look, I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. I understand why this looks bad, but I have proof that I wasn't even in this city 2 weeks ago when that account was opened. The manager's expression remained unreadable. Proof? I pulled up my phone and scrolled quickly through my gallery. 2 weeks ago, I had been in another state, visiting my cousin. I found a picture from that day. Me standing in front of a roadside diner, time-stamped. Then I opened my email and found my flight booking details, showing I had only returned to the city a week ago. I placed the phone in front of him. Unless I figured out how to be in 2 places at once, that account wasn't opened by me. He stared at the screen for a long moment. I could see the gears turning in his head. Then finally, he sighed and rubbed his temple. This changes things. Damn right it does, I said, crossing my arms. Now, the real question is, who actually opened that account? The manager straightened in his chair. He turned back to his computer, typing faster this time. I watched as he navigated through a series of internal files, then stopped. His eyes widened slightly. That's strange, he muttered. I leaned in. What? The ID used to open the account. It was scanned into our system. but there's something off about it. He turned the monitor slightly so I could see. It was my ID. Same name, same date of birth, but the photo? That wasn't me. My stomach twisted. The man in the picture had similar features, just enough that someone who wasn't paying close attention might think we were the same person. But I knew my own face, and this wasn't it. That's not me, I said firmly. The manager's eyes flickered with realization. This means someone used a fake ID with your details. Bingo! I sat down now, finally feeling like I had some ground to stand on. So, whoever this guy is, he's been laundering money through an account under my name. And now, I'm the one looking suspicious for trying to withdraw my own damn money. The manager didn't reply right away. He was already typing something, accessing another screen. Then he froze. His face paled slightly. I didn't like that reaction. What now? I asked. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. The flagged account? Just 5 minutes ago, someone attempted another transaction at a different branch. A large withdrawal. A chill ran through me. 5 minutes ago? That meant whoever had stolen my identity was still active. Right now. The manager looked at me. This might be bigger than just fraud. I need to escalate this immediately. He reached for his phone, but before he could dial, the office door suddenly opened. I turned sharply. The security guard stood there, his stance firm. His radio crackled softly on his shoulder. We got a call from corporate security, he said, looking between us. They need the suspect detained until further review. The word suspect sent my blood boiling. Hold on, the manager said quickly. There's been a mistake. He's not... But the guard had already stepped inside, hand near his holster again. I knew that look. It was the look of a man who had already made up his mind. Panic flared in my gut. If I got taken into custody right now, this whole mess would get 10 times harder to untangle. I needed to flip the situation, fast. I raised both hands slowly. Before you do anything, I suggest you check the surveillance footage from 2 weeks ago. The guy who opened that account? Not me. The guard hesitated. The manager, to his credit, was already typing again, navigating the system. A few tense seconds passed. Then suddenly, there. The manager pointed at the screen. Pull-up camera feed from the day of the account opening. The grainy black and white footage loaded. And then, there he was. A man walking into the bank, heading straight to the counter. He looked enough like me that, at a quick glance, it made sense why my name had been flagged. But as the camera zoomed in on his face, the differences became clearer. The shape of his jaw, the slightly thinner eyebrows. Close, but not me. The guard's eyes narrowed as he studied the footage. I exhaled sharply. Now, do I look like that guy to you? Silence. Then the guard muttered under his breath. Son of a... The tension in the room shifted. I could see it in his posture. The way his shoulders dropped slightly. The way his hand moved away from his holster.